Hi, this is Jurgen Rasmussen. Welcome to the Provocative Hypnosis vlog. Several people have asked me, Jurgen, what about personality disorders? Do you work with personality disorders? How would you work with a personality disorder? Um, do you even accept that term? And is there anything that can be done to help someone who has been diagnosed with a personality disorder? So let me answer in the following way. I do and I don't. So I've had a lot of interesting requests over the years, but I have never ever had a client come in and say, I have X personality disorder, meaning either borderline personality disorder or narcissistic personality disorder. They kind of, the psychiatrists talk about 10 different personality disorders. I've never had a person come in and say, I have this particular personality disorder, and I would like for you to cure me or help me overcome that particular personality disorder. So, in that sense, I don't work with people who have personality disorders. At the same time, I do have and have had many clients who I suspect would more than qualify for some of these personality disorders, specifically borderline personality disorder, for example. If you see a lot of people who have issues with rage and anger, for example, or who have very troubling relationships and a lot of instability in terms of moods that are very dramatic and they're very impulsive, at least some of these clients could qualify for such a diagnosis. And I'm sure some of them even have had such diagnosis, even though I don't specifically or haven't been in the habit of asking for it. So, but if someone, asked me, could I help them with a particular personality disorder to cure it? Now, remember, I don't, I'm not a psychiatrist. I don't diagnose. I don't even believe in mental illness or in using a medical model when it comes to psychological and emotional suffering. So what I so here's a more practical way of thinking about it, according to me. The tricky part, I think, is that if you look at these various personality disorders, what is it? How does someone qualify as having a personality disorder? Well, if someone's habitual or kind of enduring way of thinking, feeling, and behaving in the world is too different than what is considered average, then they're likely to be a prime candidate for being diagnosed with a personality disorder. One problem, I think, with these different personality disorders is that they can be hard to kind of distinguish from each other. And a person who qualifies for one of them may easily qualify for several others as well. And people who qualify for personality disorders often have other issues that may be more relevant to directly work with. So, one common denominator that people with personality disorders tend to have is that they've never quite developed a mature sense of self. That's that's one common denominator. The other one is that they fail to regulate themselves psychologically and emotionally in good ways. And when they interact with other people, in addition to not regulating their own emotions and inner life in a good way, they fail to accurately read and respond to other people in ways that are functional a lot of the time, right? So what I would be likely to do is to say to someone, look, let's ignore this whole label and instead look at in what contexts of your life do you have challenges that are meaningful for you to resolve? So the person might say, look, I have temper tantrums, I rage. Well, in that case, we might look at exploring anger and how anger works and what's the nature of anger and helping them to develop specific strategies and skills around that. Or they might say, look, I have intense fear of abandonment, so that I sabotage my relationships. I have extremely unstable and dramatic relationships, don't work out for me. Well, in that case, we're looking to help them to develop ways of relating to moods better and understanding the nature of thoughts and developing other ways of communicating and expressing themselves in relationships. So the way I would likely work with that is again to try to look at where in this particular individual's life are they struggling, in what contexts, in what ways, and to hone in on that and try to help them to have insights into the nature of their experience and help them develop particular skills and strategies related to that. That seems to be a useful way of approaching things. Now, something else to keep in mind here is that when you talk about personality or kind of more enduring, habitual, deeply ingrained ways of thinking, feeling, and behaving, it's very useful to make a distinction between emotions, moods, and traits. These are different. And if you, for example, have a background in neurolinguistic programming or hypnotherapy or something like that, if we look at NLP, for example, as a field, most of the interventions or techniques revolve around temporary states of mind or emotional states that are connected to specific contextual cues or triggers. Meaning, when I walk into an elevator, I get a surge of fear. Or when someone speaks to me in a particular voice tone, I have this emotion of anger coming up. Very seldom is there anything to deal with moods, for example, or with traits. So for example, an emotion usually lasts for a few seconds or maybe a few minutes at the most. It seems to be triggered by a so-called external event. It's not, of course. It's our thinking. It's our meaning making. But let's say someone cuts in front of you in traffic, and you have an interpretation of that, of like, what a fucking asshole, and drive properly, and people should be considerate. If you have a thought like that looks very real to you, you might have an emotion of anger then, or road rage, when you're driving behind the car. Moods are more long lasting. They can last for hours. They can last for a day. They don't necessarily seem to be connected to anything, and they may have more to do with lack of sleep and how you've eaten and a lot of various factors. So for example, and if you look at personality traits, a trait is not an emotion, but it's more of a disposition to experience certain emotions. So, for example, some people are hostile individuals. Some are happy-go-lucky or optimistic. Some are shy. These are more personality traits. Again, they're not emotions or moods in of themselves. They're more these temperamental dispositions that dispose you to more likely have certain emotions or moods. So, for example, if we look at, for example, anger is an emotion, irritability is a mood, being hostile is more of a personality trait. So a personality trait of being hostile in your orientation might predispose you to get irritable and angry more often. But even a person who has a more enduring personality trait of being a hostile person is not going to be angry all the time, right? Or if you take, for example, fear is an emotion, is an emotional state. But being kind of worrying or apprehensive is more of a mood. Being shy is more of a personality trait, right? Or if we look at sadness is an emotion. Being blue is more of a mood. People talk about being in a blue mood. A personality trait of melancholy is more of a personality trait. Or if you take an emotion of disgust, for example, you smell something, and you have this instantaneous emotion of disgust. Being disdainful is being in a disdainful mood is more of a mood, right? Arrogance, then, is more a personality trait. So if you have a personality trait of being kind of arrogant, you're more likely to be more disdainful and to have more emotions than of disgust. If you're a hostile orientation, you're disposed to being more irritable and to be more likely to get angry. Or if we talk about joy, joy is an emotion, right? Euphoria is more of a mood. You're in this euphoric mood. A personality trait behind that might be more of being optimistic, right? You're more like an optimistic person. So when working with someone who has a personality disorder, working with emotions is different than working with moods, and is different than trying to moderate or adjust more of a personality or temperamental trait. You better kind of have some map as to the difference between them, or how you might express a particular personality trait uh, differently. So that is something to keep in mind. It seems to me that trying to change someone's temperament or personality tendencies is rough to some extent. To try to change these traits, they seem to be pretty ingrained. But simultaneously, one thing I have seen with the psychological illusion model and with things like the three principles, when people remember this, people do the best that they can with the thinking that looks real to them in the moment. So even if the way someone else is behaving seems utterly nuts to you, given the thinking they have that looks real to them, what they do makes sense. You could also say that people do the only thing they really can do, moment to moment, given the thinking that looks real to them. If someone can have a deep psychological or spiritual insight, if someone can have a true insight into the nature of thought or the self being an illusion or their true nature, if someone can have a strong realization or insight in those directions, it can sometimes dramatically shift their operating system. I have seen people who have been very hostile, for example, no longer be very hostile after having these sorts of insights. Um, Having said all of this, even though I don't believe in the whole concept of mental illness and I don't believe in psychiatry as a model, and I don't diagnose and I don't accept the premise that people are mentally ill and that I'm going to help them overcome their so-called illness. I work with people to change how they relate to thoughts and feelings, and I help people investigate the nature of their experience. I will say this though, I think that the whole notion of personality disorders, especially the whole cluster B personality disorders, which consists of borderline personality disorder, narcissistic personality disorder, antisocial or dissocial personality disorder, which is not quite the same as psychopathy, but I think the whole concept of psychopathy and histrionic personality disorder, these are useful psychological constructs that do seem to point to something. And I think this is one of the most useful things that have come out of psychiatry. So, learning about borderline personality disorder, learning about psychopathy, learning about narcissism, learning how to spot these patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving is very useful in my experience. So, I will be doing a few videos in the very near future. First one's going to be on borderline personality disorder. Second is going to be reflections on psychopathy. And I'm going to do one on people who have high levels of narcissistic traits, how I might work with them, how to relate to them, and also how to protect yourself from them. So I hope you'll follow along with those. If you have any questions or comments to this particular video, please ask them. Leave them where you find the video. Know that I do see clients from all over the world online every day. So if my thinking resonates with you and you'd like to explore the possibility of us working together, get in touch with me at provocativehypnosis.com. If you're seeing this in 2023, know that my next seminar, Teaching the Psychological Illusion Model 2.0, will be March 25th, 26th online. Go to provocativehypnosis.com on the seminar page, and you can see some links there to sign up. As always, thanks for listening.